This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovator's Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing killer innovation.
Welcome to Killer Innovations. I'm your host, Phil McKinney. We are here at CES in Las Vegas for CES 2018, and we are talking to a whole wide range of innovators, thought leaders, startup companies, technologies. And today we actually have a company that I've been involved with a little bit. They're part of the Fiterator program at Cable Labs, which is our version of a accelerator that helps companies that have real products match that product to specifically to the cable industry. So I'm going to let Ray here introduce himself and introduce the company here a little bit. But Ray, welcome to Las Vegas.
Yeah, thanks, Phil. It's good to be back. This is my second time here. So
second time at CES.
Yeah.
Oh, you're still a rookie.
I'm a veteran. This is we had a booth one year, and now we're just walking around. I think we're going backwards, but it's still
probably actually the better move.
Yeah. So I'm Ray Abel. I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and as Phil said, we have a company we've worked with Cable Labs for a while now, and we help people with disabilities connect to consumer technology. And so we been working with Cable Labs, been getting involved in the cable industry to be able to connect people who might not be able to use standard off-the-shelf technology to access cable boxes and video game consoles and other devices like that.
Yeah, but your technology has a much broader play than just in the cable space. But let's back up. Give us a little bit of background about yourself, because this is not your first rodeo.
Oh man, yeah. So I actually I worked nonprofit for about 8 years. So I started out at Best Buy. So I was a technology guy from early on.
You were a blue shake guy.
I was. I bled blue. When you work at Best Buy and you're 18 years old and you have your first real sense of power by being a department supervisor, it's a big deal. So yeah, I bled blue, and then I started working nonprofit. I felt bad for selling people very expensive cables they didn't need for so many years. I felt like I had to give back to society, and worked in the inner city of Pittsburgh for about 4 years. Worked with people with disabilities for 3, and then decided to start my own business. And it was a website and an events company, and launched that 2012. That was my start into the startup world.
And how'd that turn out?
Well, it's my second startup now, so I didn't become the millionaire I thought I was going to be, but we had some fun things. We went on Shark Tank and had some national publicity. We had a few things go viral, and the race series we did was actually a lot of fun. And it's one of those things, I think it's with any startup, it becomes your baby, and there's still some times where I look back and miss the race series we did. It was a cool concept, but it just didn't take off like I thought it was going to.
Yeah, I always remind entrepreneurs it was 13 startups for me.
Yeah.
And it was number 13 that I got my IPO.
Oh man!
So it is a marathon, not a sprint.
You mean I have 11 left?
Yeah, you got 11 left to go, dude.
Yeah. Oh,
you got 11 left to go, dude.
I feel bad for Dalton.
So what's your education background? College?
Went to Robert Morris, political
really?
science and economics. So yeah, really, I think eventually I'd like to get into politics further down the road, but I thought that would happen about 35 years old after I became a millionaire from that first business, but 37, and there's no political career in the future yet. So yeah.
And why Pittsburgh?
Born and raised. Lived in Boston, lived in Florida, but Pittsburgh. I mean, when you're born in Pittsburgh, you typically stay in Pittsburgh. So my family all lives within about 5 minutes of where they were born.
It's amazing how that magnetic pull always brings you back.
It really is the center of the universe.
So talk a little bit about your experience with the nonprofit, because I think it feeds into Xogo. So talk a little bit about the nonprofit experience and struggles, frustrations, successes.
Yeah. So I think I worked for 2 nonprofits, and I think when I talk to people about working in the inner city, people can kind of understand it. Even if you're not poor, you can understand what it's like to have money struggles, or you may not know what it's like to be raised without a parent, but you can kind of understand the loss. And so it's really interesting. And I think for me personally, I grew up very poor, and I had a lot of people who bought into my life. So for me, it was a great way to be able to give back and work in this inner city environment. The other nonprofit I worked with, Muscular Dystrophy Association, that's a little harder, I feel like, for people to understand, because I feel like when we see people who have disabilities, we look at them and we think, is it okay to talk to them? What kind of questions can I ask? I don't know really how to interact, and it's really hard to be able to empathize with someone unless you've actually had a personal connection with the disability space. So being in both of those environments, it's nice to be able to give back, But what I learned through that was that really people with disabilities are, I think, the largest underrepresented population in the country, where people just don't understand what they're going through, and it's 1 billion people around the world who have some kind of disability.
Right,
So,
whether it's visible or invisible,
yeah,
declared or non-declared.
exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, this is part of the frustration, I've gone through trying to understand autism with the work that we do at one of the nonprofits that we support here with the show and our sponsor support, which is Hacking Autism, is trying to understand those disabilities. If you look at autism, and I think the numbers play out even for all disabilities, right? If you have an autism diagnosis, you have an 81% unemployment rate today. And, actually my oldest daughter, who specializes in autism, and it's how I got involved with the Hacking Autism program, her best friend has CP, right? She's an accountant. She's brilliant, but she has verbal challenges and physical challenges. And what she has found is by hiding those disabilities, by working remote, not being in an office, doing contract, independent work. But that's a shame, right? They miss the social interaction piece. But in some cases, people feel like they have to hide their disabilities.
Right. And I feel like that's, and not only do you have to hide the disabilities, but it's really one of those things where, going back to just not being able to interact well, I mean, someone growing up in a wheelchair, it's, I had a few kids in my elementary school, and I remember that had disabilities, and one kid came in this wheelchair, and I was so afraid to go up and talk to him. He had this big wheelchair, and when you got to know him, he's one of the funniest kids you'll ever meet. And even working with Muscular Dystrophy Association, I mean, a lot of the people that were in wheelchairs would make so many wheelchair jokes that when you first talk to them, I can't tell you how uncomfortable it is, but they just a sense of humor and a sense of joy about life, and they understand, kind of what situation they're in, but it's that barrier you have to break down in order to actually start that conversation. Many times you just don't have that ability to do so.
But it's not only just that personal interaction piece. It's just the challenges of being able to be fully engaged in society, right? I remember when the laws were passed where we had to change all the curbs just to make them wheelchair accessible. My mom was a double amputee, back in, starting in the, late 80s. She lost both of her legs, and dealing with handicap parking, van access, and store doors, and when you get that personal connection, you don't actually have the in-depth experience because you get to go home and everything's fine, but just how trying to help these people and seeing how frustrating it is just to do the simple things of going to the bathroom in a public restroom and trying to cash out at a store with the counter above your eyes and all those kinds of things.
Yeah. And it really gives, I mean, it's for me, it's interesting because I feel like I don't feel like I'm a big complainer, but I complain about a lot of stupid things in comparison. And I feel like it's one of those, it keeps you grounded when you're working with people who...
Well, it gives you perspective. It helps you keep your head screwed on straight, right? About, what's really important in the space. But I got a feeling that this all is part of that catalyst of doing what you guys are doing now, which is around how do you take some of those barriers away? How do we make it easier for people to take advantage of even just the simple technologies that we don't even think about these days that have such a positive impact on our lives every day.
Yeah.
And I've seen, when I was at HP, I had the accessibility team reporting to me. And, you do a Braille keyboard, by the time you average out the cost for a Braille keyboard, it's $10,000. Right. Because there's just not a lot. You can't manufacture a lot of them, but you got to make a mold. You got to do all the electronics work. You got to build the product. You roll that cost in, divide it by the number of units you're going to sell, it's $10,000. And so historically, the problem is that the cost of this technology is just way outside the price range for the people who could really benefit from them.
And it's interesting too in the industry because with accessibility tech, if people have a personal connection with people with disabilities, you tend to see products that look better, they work better, they have a broader range, they're lower price because they have a personal connection. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people in the industry that take advantage of the situations. They know that if you're in a wheelchair and you need to be able to change your channel in your TV remote, you're willing to spend whatever it takes because that's something that's important to you. And they'll take a $2 remote control, add one little switch access to it that helps people with disabilities and sell it for $1,000. That's an actual example. And so I feel like it's one of those things where you got to have that personal connection and understand what people are going through.
Well, and understand that Um, there's sometimes when you got to put the business driver in the back seat and say, let's do what's right.
Right.
Let's do what's. And HP was great at this because we would sell Braille keyboards for fractions of the. We would lose money on every one of them. We'd lose thousands and thousands of dollars on every one. But doing what is right. But there's also, like you said, the people who want to take advantage of it. So we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to continue on our conversation with Ray, talking about their company and their technology and how they're addressing and helping those with disabilities access technologies in their home. So don't go anywhere. You're listening to Killer Innovations on the BizTalk Radio Network.
This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovator's Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing killer innovation.
Welcome back to Killer Innovations. We're picking up our conversation with Ray, talking about his company and the work that they've been doing on addressing technologies for people with disabilities. So, Ray, in the last segment, we kind of teed up the challenges. But what was that catalyst for versus saying, I see the problem, to I'm going to really look at trying to solve this problem?
Yeah. So I think for us, there's I'm the business guy for what we do. I don't have the engineering background. It's one of my biggest regrets is not learning how to code. I still bothers me to this day. But my co-founder Dalton, he grew up close to someone with a disability, so having that person in his life as he was growing up and seeing the challenges they faced, he's an actual engineer, so he can get this work done. And it's a good pairing, and I think that's an important thing when you're going into business, is finding that right partner and having someone there that can really come alongside you and keep you moving and keep you motivated. And so,
in fact, just real quick, you look at all the great companies, it was always a partnering relationship. Bill Hood, David Packard, Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak, Bill Gates, Paul Allen, right?
Yep.
Finding that complementary.
Yeah, and I appreciate it. I'm the Jobs, he's the Wozniak. So yeah, this is perfect. I appreciate the compliment, Phil. But
I'll check with Dalton on that.
But yeah, so Dalton had the engineering background, and actually it started out as a class project. And the intent of the original product we did was to be able to help specifically people with disabilities connect to a GameCube. And then coming on board, we started seeing when I kind of had the broader vision of the cable industry, and we started looking at things like that, and went from there to what about smart homes, and what about all these different devices, and how can we make a central device that helps all these different layers. But it came from personal experience. We saw the problems, we saw the challenges, and
so it was a passion project.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so it started off as a class project
Yeah.
to solve a very specific problem. Then what? Did people try to say, well, if you could do that, could you do this? And then it kind of didn't organically grew? What was that migration?
So I came on a little bit after Dalton and Noam started. That was the two co-founders. They went to University of Penn. That's where the product was built, and they started doing an accelerator in Pittsburgh, just a small accelerator there. And the idea was, all right, how do we take it? It was really just, at that point, it was still just for gaming. It was going to be, well, maybe not just GameCube, but how about GameCube, Xbox, Wii, all the big systems. And with an idea that rehabilitation was a longer-term play for us. And then when I came on board, it was actually, before I came on board officially, I wanted to kind of meet the team and really get to know Noam and Dalton. And we went to an event in Philadelphia, and I randomly ran into this engineer from one of the cable box manufacturers, and just seemed like a really nice guy. Didn't actually seem like someone who would be good for the business. He just seemed like he really cared about disabilities and what we were doing. And decided to grab lunch with him the next time I was in Philadelphia. And when I did, he had mentioned that he knew this guy, Tom, who was the vice president of accessibility at Comcast and would like to meet with us. And I said,
Tom is well known in the accessibility community.
Tom Lidkowski, he's a great guy. And we've been talking for a year and a half now, but that's where even the cable industry got started. It was one of those moments of, hey, we're going to go meet with Comcast. Let's make this work with Comcast cable boxes. So going in with Tom, he expected us just to talk about gaming and what we're doing. And we had hardwired an infrared port into the back of our prototype unit and made it work with a cable box, and just showed off kind of the connections.
He had to be thrilled with that.
Yeah, it was great. We also had a drone flying around that almost hit him in the head, so that was not our best idea. But the drone wasn't great. He wasn't, but the cable box, it was a good move.
But it's actually interesting when you think about Comcast and the work that Tom's been doing. I knew Tom before he was at Comcast in the accessibility space, but that is the Comcast, and particularly the voice remote, is the perfect example of a technology which had its catalyst in accessibility that has actually had such broad adoption. People think about accessibility as just really this niche thing, but it actually, when people have that experience and they go, wow, it's actually a better experience for me, and therefore it has much broader appeal to it overall.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing. Oftentimes when we talk about the industry and accessibility, people are putting out these niche devices, and they're doing it specifically because if you can sell 10 devices at $1,000 each, it's much better than selling one device at $300 because that's kind of the way the market works. But when you build a product that actually works well, and one of our guiding principles, we always say that we want to build beautiful interfaces that work across a lot of levels. So for us, it's one of those things where when we build an interface that works well for people who have 2 switches in their wheelchair, that's all they can use is those 2 switches because they may not have any access or any ability to move below the neck. You can make an interface that works well for someone like my grandfather, who he's always been a techie guy, but now that he's getting older, it's tough for him to be able to access his TV and his surround sound system. I'm getting all these tech support calls from him, and so I love talking to the guy. But
so it's just not me.
Yeah, no, it's everybody.
Everybody becomes their own personal family CTO.
Yeah, on our homepage now, on our website, we actually just put a picture of one of the women that's helping us with marketing. It's her and her dad, because I know him pretty well, and he's terrible with tech, so he's now our face of people who are dads who are bad at technology. So, but yeah, so when you build that interface that works well for disabilities, it works well across a lot of levels. And I think even when you look at something as simple as a smart home, I mean, in my house right now, it's a 1-bedroom condo, and I just added my 6th Alexa. I have OK Google, the Google Mini. I have a Smart Things hub, and I still can't get everything to work well together. And I think my neighbors think I'm in an abusive relationship because I'm always yelling at Alexa, and it is a condo complex, so I feel like they hear me getting frustrated. So you excuse me. So you started off, with the project, then you showed it to the team at, in this case, Comcast, showing it working with the cable box. Where does this go from the standpoint? Because it's now, I've seen multiple generations of this product, lots of interface options. Where's it at today? What's the kind of the status of today of what it can control and what are its possibilities? Yeah. So right now we have it working with Xbox, PlayStation, most cable boxes, even things like the Spiro BB-8 robot that rolls around. It's really any kind of technology. And our goal, we're building out an open platform right now. So that's our next big step. It's 2 things. We have our application we're running out for the simplified interface that just allows you to control everything you need. But more importantly for us, we're building out an open platform where developers can create their own access hooks, where if you have something in this studio that doesn't work that you want to be able to access with Xogo, you can create the software that makes it work and share it with other users. And that's a big thing that's been missing. And everyone gets used to the app stores in their phones and these sharing and creation, but in the accessibility space, everything is one-off and everything is made specifically for that person. And that's where those costs skyrocket, and that's where you can't do it at scale. And for someone like HP, it's easier to be able to sell things at a loss. We can't.
Exactly.
We need to figure out a way to make it scalable, and that's
for you though, it's really about how do I build a platform that has all of the interface options. So it's really left to the imagination of the integrator to take advantage of this interface to this interface, and let me facilitate having that work in a home, or to put together a solution for someone with a unique set of disabilities to take advantage of that platform.
During the next break, I'm going to take some notes and put what you just said down there. I feel like you just set up our marketing for our next level, so that's perfect.
I don't know about that, but and that's always the hardest part. So we're going to continue this conversation when we come back from this commercial break. Talk more about the business, where you're at, your fundraising activities, and what's next. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this quick commercial break.
This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovator's Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing, killer innovation.
Welcome back to Killer Innovations. I'm your host, Phil McKinney, doing our conversations with Ray, talking about their work on accessibility. So now you guys have been around for a while. The company name is?
Bansen Labs, product Xogo.
Bansen Labs, Xogo. Where are you at today with the product? And then kind of give us a little bit of history of Bansen Labs specifically, and where you're at stage-wise, and kind of where you think the future is for it.
So when we started out, going back to the original device we had, it was actually called the Hacks Box, which I'm sure we would have been sued out of oblivion by Microsoft when we came out with that. So our original box has gone a long way. But we took that original box and tested through rehab centers, hospitals, tested with users, and got feedback. And it's amazing when you find out you have something so wrong. We had all the interface that we were doing built right onto the hardware device itself, did the testing, realized that was terrible, and so we came out with Generation 2, which is where we're at now, and actually Generation 3 if you count the original class project. But we have the hardware box. It's getting closer to be ready for manufacturing, and we're building out that software platform behind it. So all that configuration that we were doing through the box itself, connected to a TV, we've now brought out to an application. So it works off PCs, iPads, Android tablets. So it gives the user more control. And what we found, even for our core audience, our initial launch audience of people with disabilities, we assumed it'd be easier to connect through the TV and have it on that self-controlled box. But pretty much everyone we worked with had a tablet already on their PC. And even if they had difficulties with grasping or using, they could still use a tablet in their own unique ways, and now it's our job to find out how we can make that work for them.
So the product then is an application on some form of a device, whether it be a tablet, a phone, PC, whatever. That interfaces then to what?
If you talk to my co-founder, it's a protocol interconverter box. So
Protocol interconverter box.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's those fancy words. So we take any.
That's why engineers are not in marketing.
I like the term. It makes me sound smarter when I say it, so it works out well. But we take any inputs, whether that's Bluetooth.
Kind of sounds like a flux capacitor.
Oh,
yeah,
actually,
it's your version of a flux capacitor.
I don't know if that's copyrighted, but I feel like we should have a flux capacitor inside the Xogo. But we take Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, Zigbee, Z-Wave inputs, as well as, it sounds crazy that we have a bunch of headphone jacks in the back of it, but with accessible tech, again, going back to the fact that it uses a lot of older technologies, people use switches that are based off of the headphone jack 3.5mm ports. So we have some of those in the back. And that box takes all those signals, and then through that application that we have on the iPad, you configure it to work with the cable boxes, the smart homes, all these.
So if I'm in my living room and I'm wanting it to control my cable box, so this box then literally kind of goes into my cabinet, and I'm sitting on the couch. I've got my applications or whatever, and I can change my channels and that type of thing.
And you can do it through the application, and there's some things out there that do that, but you can also take any unique input you want. So if you want to. And that's where, when you talk about the tinkerers and the people who want to try new things, whether that's someone who wants to use their wheelchair joystick to control their TV, or whether it's someone who, has a Bluetooth remote they want to put on their any kind of hardware, they can control their TVs or their lights, and it makes it very customizable. It's almost like the when you look at the Raspberry Pi, people can create really cool, unique devices from that. We can do the same thing with these inputs and outputs. You can turn on your lights with any Bluetooth switch. You can use a Xbox controller to control your home automation. Whatever you want to do, whatever works best for you, you can do it.
Really interesting. So what's the status of the company today? How big are you?
Oh, we're huge. We now have 2.5 people and some advisors. And what's unique with us is we have so full time we have 2 people, and we have a part-time person helps out with administration. But we are a company that's doing something good. We want to make sure that our product is helping people. And there's a lot of people who have bought into that mission for us. And I think a lot of times when you have a startup, you have advisors, and you try to find just the biggest name, just so they're on the list. And you have Phil McKinney on your board, and Phil may not have anything to do with the company, but it looks impressive. For us,
it's the masthead false.
Exactly. For us, we find people who are actually doing really cool things and really are good at. Not saying you're not good at what you do. I feel like I just insulted the host here, but we find people who are actually in the field, and we have a person, Emma, who does marketing. She actually has Parkinson's. I met her at an event with Microsoft, and she's doing marketing with us. We have a girl named Daisy who works for Comcast and is the software engineer, and she's taking her spare time to be able to help and create with us. And most of the people we work with have connections to either disabilities or through myself, just people that I've been with through the years, and now they're giving their talents and their time to be able to help what we're doing. And that's the kind of advisory board I like, when people are actually contributing to it.
Well, you're touching on a challenge that a lot of businesses run into when they're trying to kind of merge this, traditional for-profit, grow the business, and also have a social good component.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're complementary. Sometimes it can be a real challenge to, how do you divide kind of the business between. And what I don't know if you've seen this, but what I've seen in some cases is not treating them as two separate. It really becomes part of the core.
Yeah.
And for you guys, the social good is really the catalyst that got you here today.
Yeah.
And that can be a pretty good attractor, I'm guessing, for volunteers, at least, people saying. But then the flip side, we had somebody on the show here not too long ago that their advice at the end of the episode was around, be careful of your advisors, right? Because you can run around and try to do everything your advisors are telling you to do, and you end up thrashing.
Yeah.
You get told to do this, and then you run over and do this, and you run over and do that. So
we're already on a limited time. I mean, there's only so many hours in the day, and so when we follow we can't follow every lead that comes out there, and that's what I like with our advisors. They're people who kind of catch our vision or coming alongside of us. And going back to what you said about this kind of hybrid with social impact, where we're doing something good while we're building a business, that it's nice because a lot of times it opens the door for us. When we say we're doing something to help people with disabilities, a lot of times people just at least take a meeting with us. The part that's really the struggle for us comes in with investors, because it's funny with even social impact investing, it's still all about the bottom line. I mean, when it comes down to it, if there's investing involved, it's all
people
about
want the
bottom
return,
line. Right? And I think for us, it's not that we don't have a good return or we don't have a good business model long term and how we're building this. I think people expect the next Uber, that they're going to invest, and in a year and a half they're going to be worth $15 billion.
So where are you at with your capital raise?
So we did a seed round so far. So we've raised about $450,000 total between, well, to clarify that, we've done some of that through investments. And one of the nice things about being a social good company is that you can win a lot of awards. So we've actually had about 100,000 of that in just competitions we've won where it's been free money. So that is one benefit from doing
no equity in that
equity, no equity. They give you money for doing something good. So that's been good. But so we've raised that money, and we still have, as a small company and as someone who's paying ourselves very little, we have been able to make that work for us. And now we're getting ready to start moving into a bigger round of funding. We have a couple proof of concepts we're working on with larger companies that if they integrate, we're going to have to grow much more quickly than we're doing right now.
Then you get the reverse problem.
Exactly.
And so today, the seed round, been friends and family then?
Yeah, so personal connections. We had one institutional investor, but it was originally one of the companies we did an accelerator with, and one of the they came on board for a little bit extra on top of it. So it was nice. They saw what we're doing, and decided to come on big. So it was
So this first big round then will be really your A round then.
Yeah.
At this point,
we're looking at potentially, depending on what happens with some of these proof of concepts we're working on, either an extended seed round to spend a lot more focus on the development, or if we do get a contract, then we are
then you're into the A round, and now you're off to Taiwan with the ODMs to get design for manufacturability challenge.
Yeah. That's do you want to come along with us for that?
Oh, I get that. I think I've had 12 people so far here at CES corner me for help on hardware. Hardware's hard.
Yeah.
Right. I keep flashing back to the fact that we used to ship 40 million laptops a year and 30 million desktops a year, and crank the factories. But hardware is incredibly hard. It's just hard to do. It's software and apps, much easier.
I know.
And actually, I think your approach to depending less on the being in the core hardware, giving yourself that flexible platform so you can be app driven to control those interfaces, that gives you a huge amount of flexibility and actually reduces your dependency on the hardware piece.
Right.
So we're going to take another quick commercial break here. When we come back, what I'd like for you to do is to share, if you get a chance to kind of know all of your experiences now and go back to the beginning, is there anything you would do differently? So take this during the break, think about it, come back with 1, 2, 3 items that if you could give yourself advice back to the beginning, knowing what you know today, what would that advice be? So
That sounds great.
I'm putting you under the gun, and when we come
right.
back from this commercial break, we'll be waiting to hear what advice you would give us and the listeners that you should be thinking about doing differently. So don't go anywhere. We're going to come back. We'll have the advice segment and understand kind of the pain and challenges of taking an innovation and turning it into a real product and a real company. We'll be right back after this break.
This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovator's Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing killer innovation.
Welcome back to Killer Innovations. As we wrap up the show, I'd asked Ray to think about it during the commercial break to come back with a couple pieces of advice. So if you had an opportunity to go back from what you know now and share with you back at the beginning of going down this whole experience, what would be those pieces of advice?
Yeah. So I think when I think about that first startup I did. And, like I said, it was a website. We had the race series, but the biggest issue I had with it was I had a very part-time, when I say co-founder, it was someone that was a good friend of mine who helped out early on in the process and was there with me for a lot of the fun things. But they weren't there with me because they had a full-time job and they were afraid to make that jump into just doing the startup. They had a family, they had kids, and so for them it was a very part-time co-founder. And for me, that's just not something you can do. And I feel like this is one of the things when you get into the startup world, really with any business, you're so invested, it becomes your baby. There's so much you have to do, and sometimes you just get misguided, and you have to have someone next to you that's comes from a different perspective, can challenge you, can grow with you, can actually encourage you as well, because I think that's an important thing. Sometimes you get overworked, and it's nice to have someone in the trenches with you, and that was a huge miss on my first time through.
So would you say then that you're against people trying to do the startup thing by doing some kind of a side hustle?
Yeah, I mean, if you can do it, great, but I don't see how it can be done. I think it depends on what it is. I mean, I think a lot of times the term startup gets a little bit modified based on what you're doing. I think a startup to me, if you're building a company that you want to take to a large level and be able to grow quickly and be able to really innovate, you really have to do it full time. I mean, innovation happens every year that we come to CES. Well, now second year, we see things. We're like, oh man, we had thought about that, but were we able to implement it in time? Or maybe they're doing it a little bit better. And so you really have to put your whole heart and soul into it from the very beginning.
Right.
And doing it alone, it's a lonely world.
Well, one, doing it alone, right? We talked earlier about the benefit of having a partner who else. Look, none of us have 100% of the skill sets, right? So finding people, 1, 2, 3, however the original core team is, filling in the gap. But then secondarily, there's a lot of talk out there about doing these side hustles. Oh yeah, keep your full-time job and do it from 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. type of a thing, and try to pull it off. And I agree with you mostly, because that is incredibly hard to try to do a hustle that turns into anything. And you hear every once in a while one of them making it big, but it's almost a little bit of the burning of the boats.
Yeah.
All chips in, no retreat, you don't have the safety net. It's amazing how you get focused.
And I feel like when you look at Parks and Rec, it's one of my favorite shows. Ron Swanson, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Ron Swanson, but a great piece of advice he's given me is that you never want to half-ass two things. You want to whole-ass one thing. And I feel like when you really got to put everything in and really go for it. So
right.
Yeah.
So what's the second piece of advice?
I think that is just making sure you have your business in order. I think one of the things that I came into with Bansen Labs and with Xogo is that we had so many lawyer fees, and it was frustrating to me because I hate paying lawyers. When you're starting a startup, the amount of lawyer fees and legal fees that start building are rough, and I don't like paying them in general. So, but it was nice that we have this whole structure built out, and we have the contracts done right, we have all the waivers and everything we need done properly. And I think the first time going through it, I was doing all my own QuickBooks. I didn't have an accountant, and just trying to keep track of everything. You really got to build that team around you, and a lot of times that can be done through contractors, and you can find some really good deals. I think one of the things that scared me with the first business was, well, how much am I gonna have to pay an accountant? And We have a guy that does our books for $100 a month right now with this business, and that takes the pressure off of me and starts, again, spreading that around. I think I held on too much to do everything myself. I was afraid to give some of it away. I was afraid to spend some money onto it. And not just a co-founder, but you need to have some of those professionals around you that are even do the job that you.
It's amazing how many entrepreneurs think that if I've got to write a check, that's a bad thing.
Yeah.
I should do it all myself. But you're not an expert.
Right.
And then when you go for your funding round, and they start auditing your books, and they go back all the way to day one, and you didn't have a professional doing it, that becomes a pretty big issue.
Right.
And it's hard to go back and recreate.
Oh, it's impossible.
And fix all those issues.
Yeah.
So if people want to track what you're up to and keep up with what you guys are doing with your product, the company, etc., where's the best place they can find you?
Yeah, that'd be through our website, myxogo.com, and that's myxogo.com.
And we'll have that link over on the show notes. Facebook?
Facebook.com/myxogo. So everything's myxogo. We actually just brought one of our advisors on to start doing social media. So hopefully all your listeners will follow us and they'll start getting good updates, because that's one thing I'm not good at is social media. So I'm on social media at Ray Abel, RayAbel. So that's Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all those fun things.
That's fine, and we'll put that all up. And there's been some good stories on what you guys are doing over on the Cable Labs site. We'll link to that so you can see the activities there. But I want to reinforce the product Xogo. I've been involved because of the work with Ray and Dalton at Cable Labs and UpRamp, our Fiterator program. This merging of business and social good is inspiring from the standpoint of just doing the right thing for a segment of the population that typically gets overlooked, ignored, or gets shuffled to the side. And I think what you guys are doing is great. I think the work you guys are doing and the attraction that you're getting across a variety of industries is going to have some huge impact. So congratulations on that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's great to be able to do this every day. Yeah.
So as we wrap up the show, thanks for taking the time out of your busy schedule to listen. If you haven't heard, we're now up on iHeart, and we're also up on Spotify, so you can listen to the show there, plus all the other places where you can get your podcast at iTunes and Google Play and pretty much everywhere. We'll have everything up on the show notes. If there's a topic you would like to have brought up on the show, drop me a note at phil@killerinnovations.com. We'll have all the links we've mentioned here in the show so that you can hop on over there. Just go to killerinnovations.com, and the show gets posted there up each Tuesday morning. You can also go back and catch the entire archive. Yes, the entire archive back to show number 1 of March 2005, recorded in a bathroom at a Marriott resort in Phoenix, Arizona. I wouldn't recommend listening to it, but it's actually quite humorous. But you can check it out, the entire history of the show. Love to hear your comments, hear your suggestions, and have a great week. My advice to you is, if you've been listening to the show, don't let the innovation antibodies get you down. Take your ideas, turn them into real products, and go change the world. We'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.